Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be creating some paper dolls using the beautiful stamps from Art Love Journal, Claire Stead. So starting off my craft journal, and I'm just gluing some collage into the background. And this is some collage paper I've made myself. I had some pink paper, some wrapping paper, and I've just stamped these hearts again from Art Love Journal. If you're in Australia, you can get these through Natalie May Scrapbooking. In UK, you can get it through Art Love Journal. She's got a shop. I think she sells internationally as well. And she's also selling her designs through Funky Fossil Designs. So if you can get those places, I'm not sure if they're sold on Simon Says or those American sites. The paper I'm using in the background as well is some of Claire's amazing new collage papers that she's had printed too. So lots and lots of different uses for different things. Going in with a little bit of neon in the background just to sort of tint everything to a similar colour. So you can still see a bit of that craft coming through, but you've got that sort of overall tint. I'm then going in with this heart stencil from Funky Fossil Designs. I can't remember the names, and sort of just stancing that in a contrasting colour. So I've got a real passion for turquoise. I really love how it sort of adds a little bit of brightness to the page. And it's just such a great tone to work with so many different colours. So it gets used quite regularly on my pages, I have to say. Those of you who've watched for a little while know how much I love my turquoise. Once I sort of put all that together, I'm just quickly drying it off, and because it's me, not wasting any paint, just painting onto my next page to use for something in the future. Once I've done that, I decided I wanted to have a focal image on the page, but I decided I was going to do some stamping across the top. And again, this is more to get, not necessarily for the quotes, even though the quotes are quite cute, but just to sort of get some text into the background. So I actually just inked up the entire stamp, not the way you should stamp at all, and just sort of stamped all over my page just to fit it in, and then I just cut the strips off because I did. There are better ways to stamp than this, but if you're lazy like me, it's the quickest way to do it, really. So just going in and seeing which one will fit in here, and just stamping in the rest. So got this sort of graffiti-like background. You can sort of see the text, but it's sort of fading into the background as well. I do get a lot of questions about the white ink pad I'm using. That one's a Hero Arts ink pad. It's called Unicorn, I think. It is a pigment ink, which is nothing wrong with that. It just takes pigment inks longer to dry. So if you're used to sort of dye-based or things like the archival ink and you haven't used pigment inks before, they do take a little while to dry, even on absorbent paper. So you just either heat them a little bit or let them dry naturally. Once they're dry, they'll stay there. They're not waterproof though, just be aware. So they will rub off with water with your wet wipe if you've got that going. So this is one of Claire's new collage papers, and her stamps obviously, and I've just stamped the ladies onto the collage paper and then drawn really, really simple bodies around them. So you can see I'm avoiding sort of the really heavily collaged bits on the page. I also do like having my dolls different heights because it makes them much easier to stack. And then just going in and cutting them out. And one of the things I really like about these faces are they've got really simple hair, so it's really easy to cut it around. I do get a little frustrated when you've got all these wispy bits of hair. I love it. I wish I could draw like that, but when you're actually fussy cutting, it's a real pain. So I quite appreciate when people do simple things. Just to add a little bit of extra, not texture I suppose, but imagery onto the page, I'm going in with the height stamp as well, and colouring over that. Then I'm grabbing my woodless watercolour crayons, pencils, I had to think of what they actually are. I keep thinking they're crayons. They are supposed to be pencils, but I think I'll always think of them as crayons. And just colouring over the top. Again, very, very funky, bright designs, doing my alien-esque people with my primary coloured skin, I just find it easier to paint and draw in that way. I find it much easier to do the highlights and lowlights when they're in completely separate colours. I get muddled when I use skin tones because, you know, a dark brown, a light brown and a medium brown kind of all look the same in different lights. So having something very, very drastic helps me a lot. It's still a work in progress working on my shading and where it all belongs. So if I can see it really visually like this, it helps me out a great deal. And also I'm using what I'm using in one, I'm using on all three. I find that really helpful as well. I usually change the hair colors of them, but with the skin tones, I just find if I've got the pencils out there, it just makes it a whole lot easier if I'm doing the same thing at the same time. As with all my figures, I take a bit of time to work on the eyes because that's the bit that really stands out to you. To make it look like a real face, if the eyes are right, everything else falls into place. So if you're wondering why your figures may not look realistic, just have a look at the eyes. Do you have a little white dot in the pupil? As soon as you do that, that will change how it looks. If you put a bit of colour on the iris, that will change how it looks as well. So just play around with that. Once I've finished, I've gone in for the hair colour, and again, why go realistic? I secretly want to have bright coloured hair. I tried it once, it didn't really work, and even then I was a bit cautious about it and put it underneath my hair so you only saw it when I moved my hair about. I try and be the sensible teacher most of the times. I should really just go with it and go nuts with my hair colour, but maybe when I'm retired I might do it. So you can see I'm adding lots of different colours. Again, the same colour tones. So with the blues, I'm using light blues and dark blues. With the reddy purpley, I'm using reds and purples, and with the green, I'm using dark and light greens, just to get those sort of subtle tones of different layers of hair. With the collage I used in the background, I'm just cutting out 3 hearts. For those of you who followed my journals for a while know when I do sort of these abstracty type figurey things, I do like to have a heart on it. Usually I use a little bit of washi, but if you've got a heart stamp or just even cut out a heart, it just works. It looks the same. And then I'm just drying it off, so I just use some gel medium to glue that down. And once I've finished, then I'm going back in with my black Stabilo oil pencil and just drawing over the images, the stamped image. So because I've obviously done some colouring over it, and my colouring's not necessarily neat, it goes over the lines of the black, and by just adding that little bit of black back in, it just makes a huge difference. So once I've got my dolls where I want them to be, you can see how having them at different heights really helps on this page. I'm just going to glue them down and have that little bit of overlap. I often find doing these onto a separate piece of paper and cutting them out is much easier to do this. You can obviously sort of create those in your books, but makes it just that little bit trickier when you're trying to overlap things. So I often find if I can just physically cut them out and manage them that way, it works a lot better for me. When I've done that, I'm just going to go in with my Stabilo oil pencil around the edges and create sort of a shadow to show which one's in front, which one's behind, just to pop them out a little bit from the background. So one of the pages in Claire's collage book is these nice big chunky words, which are great focal points on your page. So I'm just using my craft knife to cut them out, and I'm going to stick those as my quote on my page. And just really, really simple, be positive, try to work out where I want it to be. But because I didn't want to cover up the heights altogether, I chose to split it up like this. Wouldn't be necessarily how I'd write it on the page, I have to say, but I think it works. Once I've finished, I'm just going to put a simple border around my words. Again, this sort of helps to finish it off a little bit. It's not necessary, but I think it just looks that little bit more finished, having that little black line around it rather than just something white stuck on the page. Finally, because I could and it was in my hand, I got the turquoise out again just to sort of repeat some of those colours in the background. So I've got the turquoise hair, I've got those turquoise hearts in the background. So now I'm putting a little bit of a turquoise drop shadow or highlight onto the letters just to add that last little bit of colour onto the surface to finish it off a little bit. I also decided to outline the heights where you could see them, again just to give a little bit of that contrast to the page. I'm only playing with the eyes again because it's me, because nothing's ever finished while I've got a pen in my hand. And that's the finished page. So you can sort of see in close up, you can still see what's happening in the background. You can see the beautiful shading of the black and white with the pop of colour next to it, how it all stands out together. Really, really fun. Obviously you can use any sort of stamps to do this. You don't have to use the ones I've used here. Any figure stamps, create your own little figures, draw your own figures, and do something similar in the background. Really, really simple. So thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye for now.